Perfect with no flaws at all, are the laws of Allah. A way of life, a way of life, a way of life, a way of life.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All praise belongs to Allah, and may His peace and blessings be upon His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I welcome you, dear viewers, to this episode. I'm your host, Musa San Antonio, where we are going to be discussing the rites of the funeral. Joining us to discuss in this topic, we have our dear Shaykh, Sheikh Asim Al-Hakim from Saudi Arabia, Sheikh Mamdouh Muhammad from the USA, and Sheikh Salim Al-Amri from the UAE. May Allah reward you all for joining us. In the past episodes, we've covered most of the parts of the funeral, the burial, and all of these matters. However, now we're coming to some things that are associated with after the burial, our condolences. One of the questions which commonly comes up is, once the dirt has been placed and the grave has been covered, many people will say, I'm going to plant a tree or put some leaves or something, either as an extra marking or attaching some reason to it. So I'll begin with you, Sheikh Asim. What's the ruling on such matters?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man ihtada bihudahu amma ba'd. The origin of this wrong practice is an authentic hadith. The Prophet ﷺ once passed by two graves, and we know that the Prophet ﷺ was given special features from Allah. So among these features, he was made to listen to the people being tormented in their graves. And the Prophet said, ﷺ, by Allah, they are being punished for something that is not so severe or big. By Allah, it is big. One of them used to walk and do namima. He used to try to make two parties angry with each other. It's worse than backbiting. Backbiting is to mention someone of a feature of his that he does not like. No, namima is to go to two and try to make them enemy with one another. And the other one did not purify himself from urine when he urinated, did not take the precautions so that it would not come back to him again. And then the Prophet ﷺ ordered the companions to bring palm trees, and he placed it on the graves. And he said, I hope and pray to Allah Azza wa Jal that Allah would reduce their punishment in their grave as long as these leaves are green. So now the people started thinking, not the scholars, not the companions, not those of knowledge, the laymen thought that, okay, when I bury my brother, I'm going to put this on his grave. I'm going to put not only one leaf, I'm going to put a whole branch. Better more, I'd plant a tree so that the shade would be there and it's always green, and then they would not be tormented, or my brother would not be tormented in the grave. And this is ridiculous, to say it in short. Because one, how do you know that your brother is being tormented? And you are thinking negatively of Allah. The Prophet was made to know, he was informed by Allah that this is happening. Two, Ya akhi, do you have a special miracle or something that's so special for you like the Prophet ﷺ? The Prophet wished and hoped and prayed that Allah would relieve them from a little bit of the torment as long as it's green. How do you claim that you have the same thing? Thirdly and finally, did anyone of the companions ever follow this practice? Not only that, did the Prophet himself ﷺ ever follow this practice with any of his companions? He buried Uthman ibn Mad'un, he buried all his companions and the loved ones, he buried his grandchildren, he buried his daughters. He never done this with any of them. So this indicates that it is an isolated case and it's only specially for the Prophet.
We can get two lessons from here. First, when we talk that he said most of these, not all of them, are bid'ahs. They begin with something very slight, very small, and then they start increasing it to the degree that, to the degree that we can
build a tree.
Plant
a tree.
Planting
trees. They are planting trees.
So this is one. So you have to be very cautious in this. Again, we still need the support of the scholars. We still need to ask the scholars, because a person who would read this hadith by himself and isolate it from the whole context would think that he is following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So all of us need to increase our knowledge. The third one, the third lesson that we need to focus on is imitation. I think most of the Muslims who do these practices, they are imitating what happens in other countries. People throw flowers and they see this on the TV or they see it in pictures, so they try to imitate them without going back to the Sunnah. So this is the danger of imitation without asking about the Sunnah or the rules of the Islam that tells us to do or not.
And probably it was originally done by a deviant imam, a deviant so-called scholar who had blind followers. So he came and he thought that, yes, I have this blessing, I have this feature in me. If I put a green leaf, then Allah will forgive them. And there are some deviant scholars or so imams like this.
Okay. Now, we've mentioned some of the things might be imitating the disbelievers, and then we've mentioned some of the things might have come from the Muslims themselves. One other thing which can sometimes be a mixture of the two is, number one, putting the tombstone, which we've already said is forbidden. But on the tombstone you'll see written, and this is most commonly, like in Australia, I see this unfortunately at most of the Muslim cemeteries, it says Al-Fatiha. Okay, I'm going to ask you, Sheikh Salim, about this matter.
First of all, may Allah guide all the Muslims.
Ameen.
And our ummah needs to be educated. The ummah needs to be educated. We are far away from the teachings of Islam. And because of this ignorance, being distant from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this explains the misery and the suffering that the ummah is going through. Answering your question, this is another innovation. This is a bid'ah. This is not the practice of Muslim. This is neither practiced by the Prophet ﷺ, nor by his companions, or the second generation, or the third, or the four imams. It's nothing to do with Islam. People are just adding new things, innovating into the deen, innovating day after day after day after day. So to the extent that the Sunnah became bid'ah. This is the time we are living in. When you tell the people that this is wrong and this is the Sunnah, they say, no, this is a new religion. This is a new religion. And this explains the second strangeness of Islam. Second strangeness of Islam, because the people became so distant from the deen. So when you want to teach Islam to them, bring them to the pure spring, they say, this is a new religion you have concocted, you have made. Among the bid'ahs also, that when a deceased passed away, now this, whatever he left behind, it is now the right of the heirs, the inheritors. So no one has the right to touch that. Yet, you'll find them, they make banquets for 3 days, like if it is just a wedding. Arab countries, I mean, I don't know the others.
In my country.
Yes, in our countries, they are doing this, like a banquet. When the Sunnah is the opposite. What the current practice, that people will come to the household of the deceased and staying there for 3 days. They go to sleep in their homes and then they come the next day and they expect meals. When the Prophet ﷺ, what he did, when Ja'far ibn Abi Talib was martyred, Ja'far the flyer, okay, we all know that, رضي الله عنه, he said, لقد جاء لجعفر ما يشغلهم تصنع لآل جعفر طعام. The meaning that the family of Ja'far now, they are busy because of the
Mourning.
yes, the mourning. So make food for them. So it is the duty of the neighbors, not the family of the deceased. The family of the deceased, they are not in the mood to cook.
Or to host people.
Or to host people, or to receive them. It's the family around, they should cook for them and send them the meals. Not the, you see this, what the Sunnah teaches us?
Been turned around.
It's just the opposite.
I know a masjid I used to pray at, unfortunately this was common, and whenever someone died, what the family would do is come to the masjid and they would bring sweets and drinks and everything. And the first time I ever saw it, I said, oh, sweets, drinks, all these. I was having a ball, until they told me this is because someone died. And I felt a little bit strange after that, and I wondered, if they're doing this and it's against the Sunnah and it's a bid'ah, am I even allowed to eat this food?
No, you are not allowed. Yeah. And the Sahaba, they used to count this minan niyaha, as part of the bewailing. But this is an innovation. This is an innovation.
Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali, may Allah be pleased with him, the companion, he said, we, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, used to consider gathering for mourning and the food being made to feed us part of the wailing. So even the gathering itself, now in the customs in my country, in different parts of it, they even designate the time between Maghrib and Isha. They have like numbers of chairs and lights and coffee, people serving coffee and tea, and people just outside sit there, the row of the heirs of the deceased, and the guests come, and there is a formality when the recitation of the Quran is posed, they go and give their condolences. All of this is considered to be part of the wailing, and it's a sin. This is not permissible.
SubhanAllah. Inshallah, we're going to stop for a moment and go to a very short break. May Allah reward you all. Dear viewers, do stay tuned. Inshallah, we'll be back after a very short moment.
Islam solves all of its problems.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers. We're here discussing the topic of funeral, the rites of the funeral, and all things related to it. Now, before the break, we were mentioning some of the acts of mourning which people might fall into, which either be innovated or not from the Sunnah. One of the things that we were going towards was the reading of the Quran. And again, you find, unfortunately, that sometimes you would walk into a masjid and you would see all of the people reading from the Quran. And so the people would say, who died? As if the Quran is only there for this purpose.
As the Sheikh mentioned, there is a connection between this and reading the Quran.
And you say, so the Quran is the book for the living, not the book for the dead. But Sheikh Asim, when it comes to this, for example, dividing, parts so each person can, finish.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is an innovation that has been introduced to the Muslims recently, maybe like 5-10 years ago. Before, some of the Muslims had conviction that it is permissible for me to offer any form of good deeds and like wager it or transfer it to a deceased. So I would probably pray 10 rak'ahs and then say, oh Allah, this is for my deceased, my late father. Others would probably fast a couple of days and say, this is for my mother. And accordingly, widely accepted among the Muslims that if you recite the Quran, so no, I don't want this, I'd like it to be transferred to my loved one or to the deceased. To the extent that nowadays, and this is present, we can see this, in a lot of the Muslim countries, when you go to give your condolences, you'll find on the table the Quran in chapters or in juzu. So the Quran is made of 30 juzu. So you'll find 30 parts of the Quran on the table, and everyone holds one part. And they recite it in less than 15 minutes. They read it, that is. And after they finish, the family is happy. They say, Alhamdulillah, the deceased now has gained the reward of one complete recitation of the Quran. And definitely, this is baseless. As Sheikh Salim indicated, Imam Shafi'i says that the deceased does not receive any of these good deeds. However, there are a number of ahadiths that prove that you may send some of the good deeds, but only limited to these ahadith, to the deceased. And also, we know that the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when a man or an individual dies, all of his good deeds are interrupted, are cut, with the exception of the 3. So,
and what are these 3? Just 12.
Well, I'll let Sheikh Salim, Dr. Mamdouh explain these 3, but I'd like to go back to the issue of sending good deeds. And I get this like every single day. Questions, my father died, my uncle died, my son died. How can I benefit them while they're dead? The scholars, the most authentic opinion of scholars is that, 1, you can pray for them. Ask Allah for forgiveness. The hadith, after we bury a deceased, the Prophet said, "Istaghfiru li akhikum wa sallallahu lahu at-tathbit." Now, seek forgiveness for your brother and ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make him steadfast in his grave when he's being questioned. So asking Allah for forgiveness for him, supplicating to Allah, and this we can do every single night. May Allah Azza wa Jal expand his grave. May Allah make it to the end of his sight and make it a garden of paradise. We can ask as many, the sky is the limit. So supplication is 1. Secondly, Hajj. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ approved companions to perform Hajj on behalf of their deceased loved ones. And likewise Umrah. So Hajj and Umrah, they fall under the permissible acts that you offer. Thirdly, charity. As in the hadith of Sa'd ibn Ubadah, may Allah be pleased with him, he said, my mother died, and I feel that if she were to be alive, she would have allowed me to give so-and-so on her behalf. So should I do this? And the Prophet said, Asam, go ahead and do that. And the fourth and last one is fasting, and this is an issue of dispute among scholars. Some say that you can fast, mandatory fasting that the deceased did not fast, and also oaths or vows. If he made a vow to fast a month or a week, and he died before doing it, it's permissible for you to do this. Other scholars say no. You can only fast the vows. But mandatory prayer fasting such as Ramadan, etc., they say that you may not do that. And alhamdulillah, it is acceptable if you feel like doing it because of the dispute of scholars, you inshallah would do.
This is a good point, because the hadith says, "Man mata alayhi siyam, sama anhu waliyu." So if a person passed away and he has some days he didn't fast, so the wali, who's the wali, is the inheritor. So for example, if he has 30 days and you have 10 children, so if each one will fast 3 days, that will do it. So they can distribute that among themselves, yes.
And again, this takes us to the hadith that you were about to say.
إذا مات ابن آدم.
إذا مات ابن آدم انقطع عمله إلا من ثلاث. That means whenever the son of Adam, whenever a human being dies, right, his deeds are stopped except from 3 ways. One of them is walad salih yad'u lah, righteous son, of course, or daughter, that would continue making dua all the time. And this links to the issue of dua that's given that benefits the deceased person. Particularly, hadith mentioned that righteous son, which tells us that really you need to bring up your children to be good in order to benefit from them, inshallah, and to let them benefit themselves. And the second one is sadaqah jariyah, which they call it
continuous charity.
Continuous charity. For example, you make a school for people who memorize the Quran, and all those people who memorize the Quran, you will benefit from them. This is wonderful. Also, like a well of water, you dig a well of water and people would benefit from. As long as the water is running, you get benefit from that.
Or you make a building, an apartment building, you rent it, and the revenue is distributed in all good things.
Hundreds of ways. Of,
Waqf.
Yes.
Yes.
And the last one is
Ilmun nafi'.
ilmun nafi'. To leave a beneficial ilm for people. And the best of the knowledge is any knowledge that's related to Islam, related to the Quran, related to the Sunnah, and this would benefit you. But this does not deprive other scholars. Good deeds, for example, if you make an invention, right, would it fall under this share? If you invent something and the people would benefit from it, does it fall under ilmun yuntafa'u bihi? I'm asking the share.
We hope so, inshallah.
Yes, we hope so, inshallah.
So this could mean that until the day of judgment, Allahu A'lam, you could have something
coming in.
So this is a good push for anyone, because we know once we die, we can't do all of these things anymore, but we could make a very smart investment and say, what's going to benefit? Is there a masjid, a Quran school or something? And if you can put your money into this.
An Islamic channel which goes to millions and millions of Muslims benefiting from these kinds of contribution.
Printing books of other scholars, of some scholars, reprinting them, so the same thing.
Not that many people read books nowadays, you could set up a website.
Oh, websites?
As the shift is slowly changing. It means that, of course, we want to be smart. We're concerned about our hereafter, so we should take advantage of these things.
And also we have to be from among the, especially the parents, that we have to be also keep, the ties of the kindred. So after the death of my father or my mother, my aunts, from both sides. So this is also from among the rights of the parents upon the offspring, the children.
Now, a few questions about the grave after this, because the grave is going to remain for a long time after that. Some questions may come about. For example, visitation, whether or not women can visit the graves. And then also, can the grave be moved in a case of necessity? Can it be dug up? So there's still a few things remaining which maybe we can cover for the rest of the episode. So I'll start with, perhaps women visiting the graves.
This is an issue of dispute among scholars, and the most authentic, in my opinion, and also it's the safest, is that they should not visit a graveyard. Now, they can offer funeral prayer if it's being offered in the masjid, of course, but they're not allowed to follow. Atiyah, may Allah be pleased with her, said,
Not recommended. وَلَمْ يُعْزَمْ عَلَيْنَا.
Well, I'm going to come to that. The Atiyah said, we were forbidden to follow funerals. But it was not made so strong to us. Now, this is her understanding. The second part is her understanding. وَلَمْ يُعْزَمْ عَلَيْنَا. This does not mean it was made permissible. She herself said it was made forbidden, nuhina. We were told not to. And this means that it was forbidden, but she believed that it was not so extreme. And that was her belief. And therefore the scholars say, we take the hadith as it is and not follow the understanding. We follow the commandment of the Prophet ﷺ. And as I stated before, it is an issue of dispute among scholars. My perception is that if she doesn't go, the world would not collapse. And no one among the scholars on earth would say, you have done something wrong. However, if she goes, those who see them, or the females going into a cemetery is forbidden, they will tell her this is haram. So to be on the safe side, stay home, make a lot of dua, offer umrah, offer hajj, give it in charity, and inshallah this would benefit the deceased more.
Indeed, and even going to the grave.
Sorry, Sheikh Asim, I beg to differ with you.
You have all the radakhi.
Okay, because this issue, that we have to take it to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, أَلَا إِنِّي قَدْ نَهَيْتُكُمْ عَنْ زِيَارَةِ الْقُبُورِ أَلَا فَزُورُوهَا. I have forbidden you from visiting the graveyards, so now you can visit. So this ruling covering both, because one of the principles of the Sharia, the hukum, is always applied to both, males and females. Because he mentioned the reason that it reminds you of the hereafter, and no doubt a woman needs to be reminded. Second thing, Aisha, the faqihah, visited the grave of her brother Abdul Rahman. Thirdly, Aisha radiallahu anha, she followed the Prophet ﷺ to the graveyard, and the Prophet ﷺ did not comment it. Had it been prohibited, the Prophet ﷺ would have told her, oh Aisha, fi Allah, didn't you know this? That it is haram. Fourthly, the hadith of Atiyah, we were forbade from following the funerals, but not strictly. So what is not recommended is frequently, because the hadith says, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ زَوَّارَاتَ الْقُبُورِ. So this is zawarat, means those who are frequent visitors, or if she is going to wail, she's going. But if frequent occasionally, and she feels that this softens her heart, inshallah, there is no harm. And this is controversial issue, as Sheikh Asim mentioned.
May Allah reward all of you. We have come to the end of our episode, even though there's still a few things maybe we can look at in a future episode, inshallah. It was very good having you contribute to this topic. May Allah reward you all. And may Allah also reward our dear viewers for joining us. We hope, inshallah, to see you in our coming episodes. Until then, I greet you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
A way of life, a way of life.